but outsiders, he was a scary guy. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at one time. So, but he joined the 12-step program. It turned him around amazingly. And he actually became like a leading figure down in his town where he was, and he was running the meetings and stuff like that. It's a very effective way, and I think it's got a lot of really excellent. I think it's the 12-step program's done a lot of good, and I again and again I meet people that have come out of it and they are happy with it, and and I always think, hey, it's done. I saw it myself with my cousin. I saw what he was and what he became, and he was really such a mellow, happy guy by the time he died. So much better than the early days of rumbling with the Hells Angels. He was in a pagan affiliate, if you know anything about the bikers.
Yeah.
And so they were always at war with the Angels. He was an alien. He was a member of the Bronx Aliens. And oh yeah, he was telling me stories about like they would sell heroin to people, and to step on it they would put in like cement dust. People were going to be shooting at it, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah. But I remember one thing he when I was staying with him for a while, he had a trimaran sailboat, and he called it the contrition, and he said that was something he learned, to have contrition and try to make up for what he'd done, and try to repair things as much as he could. And he was a good egg. He was a good egg.
When you guys talk about the middle path, that's something that really sticks out to me when it comes to the 12-step programs, because especially in AA they have this belief. They're like, you don't have to jump through hoops to have a direct connection to your higher power. Like that they believe that everybody who works the 12 steps has a direct link to God, to the God of the God of their understanding. You know what I mean? And whenever I hear of the middle path that you guys talk about in Buddhism, that's what it always reminds me of. So I'm pretty sure they got that concept from Buddhism. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure they are. I'm still taking notes.
I wouldn't be surprised, but that's also an idea that is kind of in the air. Even though there's a Latin tag, in medio tutissimus bis, the middle way is safest, and moderation in all things. So I don't think the Buddha ever claimed to be original either, but and it's like I was saying before, a lot of the times people look at what he was saying, it's like, what's this? This is so simple. But it's not simple. As you know yourself, you've gone through the program, it's not easy taking that middle path.
Right.
Sometimes, you want to go to either extreme. We love to be extreme creatures. We either want to just booze it up day and night, or at the other end, just I'm only going to drink warm water, not talk to anyone, and just and punish myself for all the bad things. And I do like that idea that it leaves naming your higher power up to you. You don't have to say Jehovah or Allah or Jesus or whoever, or Odin or whatever, as long as you recognize that there's something you can reach for that will reach back.
Right.
I think you could even argue that you could even say it's your higher self. There's people that like to say that. Mm-hmm. Aleister Crowley used to talk about what he called the holy guardian angel, the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. And he once said that he called this experience that because he didn't think anyone was in danger of taking it seriously. That when you have this contact, you really can't put a name on it. And when you start calling it things, that can be good for your own personal understanding. But if other people pick it up, they say, oh, well, he was in contact with Odin or Thor, so that means Thor is correct. No, it would be just as correct if it was Jehovah. It would be just as correct if it was, whatever you want to call that higher part of yourself or the higher being. Words fail us there. Words fail us at certain experiences, but we can talk about the effects they have. We can say, hey, if you do this and you make this contact, things will go better for you. This will be a resource for you. You don't have to give it the name, like you're saying, a middle way. You're not trying to either tell people there is no such thing, or not saying there is such a thing and it's this particular God. You're saying it's there.
Mhm.
Reach for it and it'll reach back.
I think the most amazing part about that whole concept is like you would think that that would be the easier path, like you were saying, but it actually puts you in conflict with everything else. Like, and that even goes with even religious concepts to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Because when you take that path, you're actually in conflict with other people's belief systems. Like they don't want to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's really strange because like whenever I was drinking and doing drugs, I was in conflict with uh you know being a good person, basically. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
I was fighting against the world, but then whenever I turn around and I decided to quit doing the drugs and the alcohol and try to do the next right thing, again I was in conflict with the rest of the world, but in a different way. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really an eye opener for me. Like, and I think out of all of the religions, the ones that really has piqued my curiosity is the Buddhism because of those concepts. You know, because
Mhm.
it's really interesting.
And when you're talking about not being specific about stuff, in Buddhism, very famously, whenever people would come to the Buddha with a question that we would consider to be religious, like, is the universe infinite? Does an arhat exist after death? What happens? He wouldn't talk about that. He wouldn't say yes or no. He would say, that's not something we're discussing here. We will put that aside because we're working on this. We're working on controlling our minds. We're working on ending suffering. We're working on, meditating. You don't have to worry about the name of God. You don't have to worry about how you're going to name all these experiences. You simply have to have them, kind of thing. So, yeah, that's why sometimes you'll hear people say, "Well, Buddhism isn't really a religion." Well, it's certainly a religion, especially as regards to IRS tax exempt status. But it's asking questions and coping with problems that a lot of times we in the West don't consider to be religious questions so much. And it ignores a lot of stuff. It's like, come on, what's the name of God? It's like, we're not here to talk about that. Go talk to a priest. Okay, we're here to get our minds working better and suffering to get out of this whole game. Um, I know I've always felt that I personally don't see any contradictions between Buddhist ideas and most religions on their practical sides. That you can have certainly arguments about like theology, but I was talking to someone that's like, well, my family doesn't think much about Buddhism and da da da. And I was like, well, look, are they really going to be upset because a guy says, look, I am not going to kill, lie, steal,
Huh.
cheat, or drink? All right, is this really a bad? I can't see any Christian or Muslim or Jew really objecting to someone saying, I'm not going to do those 5 things anymore. So, on that moral level and that practical day-to-day level, I think I don't see any contradiction really between most religions. Most religions on a social level are designed so that the society will function better. As a friend of mine said, if everybody kept precepts, you wouldn't need police. What would you need police for? No one's killing, stealing, cheating, murdering, or even getting drunk. You don't even have any drunk drivers on the road. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, but yeah, the minute you start naming things, though, you start limiting things. I mean, that's got its own power too, I guess. But the ancient Egyptians thought if you knew the name of a god, you could compel the god.
Yeah.
You could make it do what you wanted. I know your secret name, Ra. You better do this or else. I'm going to tell everybody.
I that naturally happened to me though because like my cat, I was telling everybody I don't know why I decided to do it, but I never named him.
Huh.
Just cat, just the cat, and
That's a good one. Cat is good.
I started coming to that conclusion. It was like, why would I mean, who gives me the right to actually name it other than a religious text that says that humans named all the animals on Earth? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm sure that Adam and Eve sat around naming every single creature. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It just I just there's some things that I don't feed into.
You should read Mark Twain wrote something called Extracts from Adam's Diary.
Mhm.
Have you ever read that? Very short little piece. It's Adam's diary, in the Garden of Eden,
Mhm.
and he's like, saw like I forget the details, like saw a capybara today. Didn't know it was called that, but the woman seemed to think it should be called things. She's going around naming everything. I don't see why things need names, but this woman seems to think everything needs to be named. This guy, so there's really Eve going around. I was like, well, that's a cat, that's a dog. Like, why? It's just a woofer thing. Okay, we'll call it a dog. It's funny. I was thinking too about what you were saying earlier about how when you change what you do in life, you go against the grain. It's like you're going against everyone. And I'm reminded of something I was reading. I think it was there was a famous Buddhist Ajahn. I think it was Ajahn Chah, who was criticized. He was a guy that was trying to live very Buddhist, and he would go against a lot of the local Thai traditions. The Thai traditions, well, we do this and we eat this way, and he's like, no, we're doing it this. And they would say to him, you're going against these Thai traditions. And he says, I'm not interested in these traditions. I'm interested in the traditions of the noble one. People who are in the Buddhist Sangha, you have the Sangha, which are the monks and nuns, and then you have the noble Sangha. And the noble Sangha are those monks who have realized enlightenment. They're Arhat monk, or at least they're stream enterers, which means that they're bound for release. And it's called the noble path, the truth of the eightfold noble truth. And the word literally is Arya, which means noble. And one of the interesting things about Buddhism was that it kicked over the caste system that existed in India, which was this way of like ethnic and racial separation that they had. And you couldn't eat with certain groups, or certainly you couldn't intermarry with them. And the Buddha was of the Kshatriya, the warrior, noble warrior caste, the Arya. And he said, when you join my Sangha, you are part of my family. You are of the noble Arya caste. In other words, no matter what your caste was before, now you are on the path of the noble ones. And you yourself are on a noble path and are becoming noble yourself, and you are part of the noble family. So, and it takes me back to something from the Platform Sutra, which is a late Mahayana thing, but it's still a very good quote, where this guy came up to study with the Zen patriarch, and he was from the south of China, and this guy was from the north. And the Southerners had a bad reputation. They were hunters. They had blood on their hands. They didn't live very nicely. They were ignorant. Sort of like some of the prejudices you even see today in Italy for Southern Italians, or even in the United States for Southern Americans. And so he comes to the Zen master. He says, I'm from the South. I want to study. And the master, oh, somebody from the South. And he replies, some people are from the North and some people are from the South, but there is no North and there is no South in the Buddha mind. And that's when the patriarch said, yes, good answer. You're my pupil. He hit him up with that prejudice thing. Is that going to affect your mind? Is that going to rock your boat? But his mind is past that, letting that in. And instead, he just answers very calmly, and he passed a little test when that happened. But it's still a very valid point. When it comes to Buddhism, all that matters is that you have a human body and a human mind. Doesn't matter how smart or dumb that mind is. It doesn't matter what shape, age, or color that body is, who your ancestors were. You've got the tools you need to be a noble one. I kind of like that.